Yeah.
So when people do want to find content, when they go, ooh, where are they going to find that?
They'll find it at our website.
Hello and welcome to the Rose and Rockstar from the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast and the Marketing Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rock star, but I am a CMO. It's Saturday the 12th of June, and in a moment I will join my chum, Chief Troublemaker at 7th Bear, Robert Rose, in our virtual bar, the Rose and Rockstar, where he recommends one of his fabulous cocktails and I pick his brains on a marketing topic that is top of mind for me. This week, Mary Meeker, who some describe as the queen of the internet, has published a 340-page report called Trends, Artificial Intelligence that Robert has some thoughts on, so we chat about that over a cocktail blended especially for Father's Day tomorrow. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back. After this word.
We'll be right back.
After this word.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to the bar.
Thank you very much, mate. How are you?
I am doing well. Other than the obvious bullshit that's going on in my country right now, things are generally really good here. And I will just say for the record that here in Los Angeles, everything is fine. It is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever day it is. It is all fine in Los Angeles. The sun is shining. There is no smoke in the sky. Birds are singing. There's music playing. It is all a good, fine day here in Southern California. Yeah.
Just to let people know, I'm recording this on Friday evening on the 13th of June. Hey, it's Friday the 13th. I just realised. And honestly, the news, we haven't had as much of the news as you get of it, but I'm surprised to hear that, Robert. I think they're sending in all sorts of National Guards and all sorts of Marines to suppress people like your good self. Huh?
Well, they are. They are doing that, but there's some great news footage that I'm sure you can find online where there's helicopters flying over where all of the Marines and National Guard are being deployed. And they're in a giant park wrestling with each other because they have nothing else better to do. So they're literally wrestling with each other, trying to pretend like they're arresting people and sort of, cosplaying the whole thing. And so they're, I don't know if you ever, as a kid, I don't know if you ever did any LARPing.
Right.
But it is literally the military LARPing out there doing their. It's so absolutely comical. If it weren't so horrific in terms of our constitutional crisis that's going on right now, it would just be comical.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not going to get you started on that because I know that it's a emotive issue where you are. I am. What are we going to drink to calm our nerves?
Well, so speaking of exactly this, I thought this would be fun for. Now, here's a question I have for you. Being the idiotic and sort of ignorant American that I am, is this Sunday Father's Day for you as well?
It is, yeah, because Mother's Day, we have separate Mother's Day, but on Sunday, it is Father's Day in both places.
So this isn't, so it is Father's Day obviously here as well. And so for Father's Day, I thought I would do something that is actually covering both bases of how I'm feeling right now, as well as Father's Day. And so the cocktail we have is called the Grumpy Old Man.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a really fun one. Good for summer. This is a bourbon drink.
Nice.
And so which bourbon you use is really important here. So what we're going to be doing here is combining bourbon with ginger ale and then a good amount of lime juice for that sort of citrus kick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the reason I say the bourbon makes a difference here is because you can do a really smooth bourbon. Maker's Mark is a good example where you've got a really smooth bourbon that sort of gives that sort of get more of a flavor profile to the ginger ale. Or you can go with something, that's a little more punchy, like a Jim Beam or something like that. Jack Daniels, if you like that. That's going to have a little bit more punch and depth to the bourbon than it is the ginger ale. So pick your bourbon wisely. And then basically you're mixing in, it's very simple to make. All you're doing is mixing it together in a big rocks glass, bourbon glass if you have one, and then maybe a lime wedge for garnish. And then you have what's called a grumpy old man.
I love it. I am definitely going to go for one of those. What have I got? I've got Woodford Reserve. Would that go well with this?
Yeah, I think it would. Yeah. I mean, it's basically just pick your favorite bourbon, really. I mean,
nice.
It's just it's going to flavor profile given, either to, which I love ginger ale too. So if you want a stronger bourbon basically, or a punchier bourbon if you don't like the taste of ginger ale or don't prefer it. And sort of a smoother bourbon if you like the taste of ginger ale. And if you like both, then either way you're going to be good.
I like the sound of that. I'm actually going to make one of these on Sunday, definitely, because I've got the Woodford, I've got the lime juice, just need some ginger ale, so I'll be on for that, absolutely. So, now that's delicious. That sounds delicious. Now, how I segue into the question I have for you is not quite. It is. I mean, it could be delicious. People find AI delicious, and I know that we do. We're all talking about AI a lot, and I actually picked this up from your podcast that I listened to today, This Old Marketing, and you mentioned the Future AI report by Mary Meeker. Not something I'm completely familiar with, but I am familiar with her name because she's done reports on the internet for a while, right? Is that
25 years, I believe? Yeah. I mean, she's been doing. She used to be famous. I mean, I'm sure she's still quite, renowned. But her fame used to be around the Mary Meeker report that she used to do every year around the status of the internet. And so, and it was really the status of the web, right? So where she would talk about everything from e-commerce to content to social media when it started to arrive, and and she really covered the internet and the web in a and just the reports were also renowned for their length, right? So in many cases, maybe 300 slides or something like that. And so this report, she ultimately went to go she's either working with or partnered with the Bond Company, which is I believe a private equity firm. And so now she does it through them.
Yeah.
And this year's report is on AI and the sort of growth of AI. And so, it's, and again, par for the course for her. It's 304 slides, I think. You probably went, oh goodness, this is going to be a sit down read. So,
so I'm cheating here, right? So what happened was, so I heard about this from your podcast, and then I thought, I'll go have a look at that, right? And unfortunately, there aren't enough hours between me listening to your podcast and us recording this for me to have read the whole thing. So what I wanted to do, if you don't mind, is just what were the sort of top 3 or 4 things that came out of that? Because you've read it, right? Aside from the fact that some of it is already
I've read
out
the whole
of date.
thing, but I would not say I have gone in depth into every slide for the whole thing. So I do have thoughts on the top lines and sort of the headlines, but there may be things that I missed, right? So
is this the difference between listening and hearing? I don't know. You've heard it, but you just didn't listen. I don't know. You've read it, but you haven't quite ingested it all yet.
So philosophical. All
right. So what stood out for you in this report then?
Probably the thing that's least surprising. Well, I don't know if it was least surprising. It was a little surprising to me that the breathlessness of everything in it. Yeah. So I said this on the podcast as well, but so as you go through it, it is unsurprising in terms of the kinds of, OpenAI and ChatGPT being literally the fastest growing product in history, to $1 billion. She talks about how basically the AI has taken the world by a storm, that it has become a hockey stick growth in terms of users, in terms of usage. and the way that it's starting to replace internet search and the way that it's starting to invade its way into all things marketing communications, but also beyond just generative AI, of how it's starting to be used in measurement and as well as in manufacturing and robotics and automation on manufacturing. And she really covers the whole gamut, but it's all dressed up in this, and this is what I found so ironic, which is so interesting, is that the point seems to be that AI is moving so quickly that it's very hard to cover it. And in fact, the meta or irony of the whole thing is that the report feels dated at this point.
Yeah,
right? The report feels like it's, very first quarter 2025, very breathless, very focused on venture funding, very focused on finance, very focused on how, this is going to be the way of the future and blah, blah, blah. And what it misses in so many ways is what is currently happening, at least from my observation, is the pushback we're starting to see here from both practitioners as well as some of the more skeptical side of what are we really looking at here? I've seen more posts in the last, 3 weeks about, comparing basically the current level of generative AI to just really smart Grammarly and autocomplete more than actual intelligence. And so what is the truth in all of that? Probably something in the middle. But the interesting thing to me is that when you look at the report, and the research is first rate. I mean, let me be clear that there's some really interesting stats in there that I'm sure will get cited and cited and cited and cited, and so many upcoming blog posts and white papers and all that kind of stuff. But at the heart of it, it is, hey, AI is here. It's changing everything. It might be the biggest disruption, even including the internet, that we've seen in 100 years. So that's sort of the headline coming out of it. And to me, I found it a little unuseful to be as breathless as it was.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that that's the primary point that we're getting out of the report, is that breathlessness. Because I was actually surprised when you were talking about the credibility of the author and the fact that they've covered the internet. And like a lot of when you're talking about this, or you're talking about this with Joe, and, we're of a certain vintage, shall we say, and we saw a lot of the hype around the dot-com bubble and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of repetition here. You'd think that there would be a calmer voice from somebody who'd been through that when they were observing this AI stuff, right?
Yeah, I would have thought so. But this to me, I don't want to lay this at the feet of Mary Meeker, because I think it's something that is, I just had this conversation on social media, yesterday, in fact, where someone was basically saying, well, I really am into AI, but I don't like the AI first moniker because it's a little too strict. I'm thinking we should label ourselves as AI enhanced workers. And what I responded with was, why do we have to enhance ourselves at all? Like, why? I never said I'm spreadsheet enhanced. You know what I mean? I never said, I'm PowerPoint enhanced when PowerPoint and the Microsoft Office suite came out. I never said I was web enhanced when I started into the web, 25 years ago. Why aren't we just what we do? And yes, we use AI as a tool. I'm not sure. And so what it gets to is, and then their response to me back was, well, it's because AI is so disruptive and it's a threat and all that kind of stuff. And I said, great. But interestingly enough, why is that culturally our go-to? In other words, why are we so wrapped as a culture? And again, and I said this on the podcast as well, maybe I'm tilting at windmills here, but I don't know why we're so, as a culture, why we're so ready to accept our fate as AI is this disruptive thing that's going to basically put us all out of work. I'm not sure why we think that's better. Like, AI will be only what we make it to be. And if we allow it to be the replacement for our working, and the replacement for creativity, and the replacement for all these things that we do in business, that future is as plausible as anything else. But as I've been saying over and over until I'm blue in the face, if we believe that the speed and the efficiency which AI provides us as marketers, right? So if we believe that the company, for example, can do the same or the same or more, let's call it, amount of work with AI as with the same or fewer employees, we have to also believe, because they're absolutely synonymous, we also have to believe that we could do the same or better or more work with AI with the same or more employees.
Yes. Yeah,
and I'm not so sure. I find it incomprehensible why we aren't considering the latter, right? Why we're so predestined for the former. And Joe brought up a good point. He said on the podcast, he said, well, it's because of money. And I said, that's great. I get that. It's still a stupid decision, right? I mean, I just don't, I don't know why we have to, why the default has to be there. And again, as I said before, maybe I'm tilting at windmills.
Yeah. But this is such a big topic that we're not going to cover this in our little bar conversation, and we should come back to it. But one of the things I think so I wrote a short Tuesday 2 cents this week about the fact that, AI is a free puppy. It's not free beer, right? In that you still, whatever the AI tool is, there is going to need some human interaction with it in order to train it and work it. It's just that it's a bit like, I made the comparison with open source. Back in the day when you and I were in CMS, open source was what all the cool kids were talking about, and it's free and there's no cost. Well, there fucking is. It just comes later in the project. And I think that's the same with AI, right? It's just moving around the effort of what it can do. So I call it a free puppy. I don't say it's free beer. But I think when you were discussing it on This Old Marketing, and I can't remember whether it was you or Joe, maybe, but one of the things I was thinking about, because I try and write a short post and there's a load of stuff that's on the cutting room floor, as it were. One of the things I was thinking about was, if you think about writing code, and sorry, you and I had this conversation about how actually your writing is taking longer because you're using generative AI, because it's giving you more ideas and it's making the end thing better. And I think it's the same with people who write code, because I started looking at some statistics that how much time a developer actually develops new code. It's a relatively small amount of their day. They spend most of the time refactoring, testing, making sure it's secure and all that kind of good stuff. So I don't know. I'm on a bit of a rant now, and it's your job.
No, there's data actually to support support your idea here. I don't know if you saw it. I'll find it and send it to you.
Oh, splendid.
There is a LinkedIn post from this woman who came out of Google. She's ex-Google and is now in consulting or something like that. And she actually did the math.
Oh, wow.
And she found that, yes, Google indeed did lay off 30% of its developers or whatever, but the research shows that they're saving less than 10% of time.
Yeah.
In other words, it's a completely asymmetric savings.
Yeah.
That they're saving much less time than they thought, because just exactly to your point, the coders that are looking at it are spending actually more time checking, reviewing, ensuring that they're secure, that the code that is getting written by AI is good, and it's not. Yeah. And so they're spending more time basically reworking code generated by AI than they would even in the original coding. And so that's an interesting challenge, is because, and her point, she goes, and maybe it'll get better. Yes. She said, but maybe it won't. Right. Yeah. And so the knee-jerk reaction to start to basically say, everybody's going to get replaced is not only perhaps wrong, and maybe it's not, maybe it actually will replace coding ultimately, but it won't replace we so often talk, you see everybody sort of doing this these days, the quote unquote, the human in the loop, right? Which is right. But the human part of that and the looping part is that that's those two words are doing a lot of work in that little phrase. And so you have to factor that in, right? Is that, how many people create wisdom in your team based on that ability, right? Because having even if bandwidth wise, one person can do it all. Is that really where you want to put all your bets?
Exactly.
You want to put all your bets into one viewpoint or one, I use the example all the time. Like, yes, if you give me the choice between 30 people who can write content for my brand and use AI to do it, right? And be completely efficient and develop meaningful work and wonderful, or you give me 30 AI agents who are going to develop content and one person who's going to review it all. Give me the 30 people, because I want the diversity of editing and I want the diversity of the humans in that loop. Right. I want that diversity. I want them to make mistakes. I want them to find different flaws than the one person who's going to be my single area of bottleneck and, quite honestly, a single point of failure for all of those AI agents, right? You've just, congratulations, you've just engineered a single point of failure into your marketing. And it just seems to me so baffling that we're unwilling to look at the other way around.
Yes, absolutely. And as I say, I mean, we barely touched on the report, the future of AI report. So I'll include a link to that in the show notes, and people can go and look for themselves.
It's a lot of information. I mean, there's not a lot to. You're going to read through it, I promise, and you're not going to find a lot that shocks you. Let me put it that way. Some of the hockey stick growth is eye opening, but it's not. You're not going to go, ooh, I never thought it would do that, right? You've heard most of this before, but.
Right. Yeah. So when people do want to find content, when they go, ooh, where are they going to find that?
They'll find it at our website. Oh my God. Your segues kill me.
I tried.
So find it at our website, which is seventhbear.com.
Splendid, mate. And when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you, mate?
Why don't I send them this right now to my Substack, because that's fun. Yes. Which you can find at the bottom of every page of my website if you're at seventhbear.com. But if you're in such a mood, it's seventhbearlens.substack.com, right? That's
cool. I include it in the show notes for the show as well, so I'll do that too. And most importantly for me, will you be in the bar next week, mate?
Of course.
I'll see you then. Cheers, buddy. Thank you, Robert. The report we discussed there, or we started discussing there before we went off on a general AI tangent, is Trends, Artificial Intelligence by Mary Meeker. If you Google that, you'll find it. And of course, I'll include a link in the show notes. It's well worth a flick through. So that's a wrap on our visit to the Rose and Rockstar. Thank you for joining us. Aside from the report, you can find links to Robert and me in the show notes at rockstarcmo.com, where you can also find links to our newsletter, blog, previous episodes, and all the things. Coming up this week on Rockstar CMO FM, Jeff and I will be joined by friend of the show and former Forrester analyst Simon Daniels to chat about some trends from Sixth Sense. And Robert will be back in the bar on Saturday. And in the meantime, just remember, as Dewey Finn said in the film The School of Rock, you can't just say it, man. You got to feel it in your blood and guts if you want to rock.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Henneke Watkins-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Henneke, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennekewatkins-porter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.